Preseason is almost here, and if you're not already stashing these rookies, you're probably falling behind. These are the players who could explode once the pads come on, and by then it will be too late to get them cheap. Whether it's a back climbing the depth chart or a wideout earning first team reps, now is the time to strike. I've got 10 rookies right now that you need to stash in your dynasty leagues before preseason hype drives their prices up.
Hey.
All right, guys, kicking things off at number 10, we have Olly Gordon II for the Miami Dolphins. I wasn't super big on Olly Gordon coming out of Oklahoma State, but I will say he landed in a very good spot in the 6th round to the Miami Dolphins. For a few reasons, the running back room is pretty thin behind Achane, and he's quite undersized. So I think they're going to be using Olly Gordon in goal line sets and those 3rd and short situations. And he has some upside for sure. You look at his sophomore season at Oklahoma State in 2023, he had some of the best stats in 2023 in terms of the running back metrics. And then this past season at Oklahoma State, the team kind of fell apart. The offense was horrible, and he was very much limited because of that. They didn't even give him 200 carries last year. Only 880 rushing yards, but he did have 13 touchdowns. He does have a nose for the end zone, and he can get in on those goal line sets. He will get in pretty consistently. Don't really worry about him catching passes all that much. That's not really his thing, but you see him in camp working in goal line sets. I think that's where he's going to be utilized. And if this offense can return to what they did in 2023 with that high scoring offense and Raheem Mostert, you saw him get 18 touchdowns in this type of goal line role. I think Olly Gordon can do something similar if his ceiling hits. I'm thinking maybe 6-7 rushing touchdowns if this offense really starts clicking this year. Next up on my list is Kyle Manungai for the Chicago Bears, and he's on this list for very similar reasons as Olly Gordon is on this list. And at 23 years old, he's very young at 5'8", 211 pounds. That's the exact build that I love in running backs, low center of gravity guys. And he killed it at Rutgers last year. They had a very solid running attack, 256 attempts, almost 1,300 rushing yards and 13 touchdowns. He's not going to offer you much in terms of a receiver, but he's going to a very thin running back room. He's got Roschon Johnson there, who I also kind of compare Kyle Manungai to in a way. I think he's slightly better than Roschon Johnson is at this point in time. And I thought the Bears were going to grab a running back a little bit earlier in the draft just because of how inefficient DeAndre Swift was, and Ben Johnson had already gotten rid of Swift before. But now with this revamped offensive line, I think the running game is going to be a lot better for the Bears this year. And Kyle Manungai is probably the best pass protector on the Bears right now at the running back position. So I think that's going to get him on the field a lot more than people think, despite him being a 7th round pick. I think Kyle Manungai can fit in as the 3rd and short guy and the goal line back as early as mid-season, if not even earlier than that. So I think Kyle Manungai is a solid stash right now, especially if DeAndre Swift goes down with an injury. All right, at number 8 on my list, we have Arryn Smith for the New York Jets. And guys, he's got some drop issues. I'm going to get that out of the way right away, but at camp, he's been looking very solid. And at 6 foot, 179 pounds, I will say he's a little bit undersized, but in nowadays NFL, undersized receivers have it a lot easier compared to about 10, 15 years ago. So these guys can come in a little bit lighter now and be a little bit faster on the football field with all this motion and things like that. But at Georgia last year, 48 receptions, 817 receiving yards, 4 touchdowns. He was very much the deep threat, has some solid yak ability as well. But I think he'll probably work primarily as a return specialist, which doesn't really translate to fantasy points for us. But the Jets wide receiver room is pretty much non-existent. They drafted Malachi Corley last year around this same round. I think Corley was a 5th round pick, but look at the draft capital, 4th round pick. He's very low on keep trade cut, and he's a 4th round pick. A lot of these, I think Restrepo's even valued over Arryn Smith right now in terms of keep trade cut, which is kind of crazy because he went undrafted. I think he's very much undervalued right now. I think he's worth a stash because behind Garrett Wilson, like I said, very thin. He's probably going to see the field a little bit, and he's got some electric speed, as you can see here in his stats here. He is phenomenal in terms of what he brings as an athlete. He just has to figure out the drop issues, and I think he could be a solid wide receiver 2, wide receiver 3 on this team at his ceiling. All right, next up was another running back that I was fairly high on coming out of the draft. It was DJ Giddens out of Kansas State, landing with the Colts in the 5th round. I thought he fell a little bit too far in the draft. I think 5th round draft capital is just a little bit too low for him, just because of what he brings to the table as a runner. He's not the fastest. I think his acceleration's pretty solid. He gets to top speed pretty quickly, but his long speed is definitely not there. His contact balance and physicality aren't really that great either, but his vision is spectacular. 205 attempts, 1,343 rushing yards, and 7 touchdowns, and he can catch the ball a little bit out of the backfield as well. But the main reason why I think this guy is such a solid stash is the lack of a RB2 for the Colts. I mean, they had nobody last year when JT went out, and JT's durability concerns are still there. I mean, he gets hurt pretty much every single year nowadays, and with DJ Giddens, I think he's the RB2 shoehorned in right away, and I think he has some NFL tools, and I think he could be a rather consistent back at the next level, especially with that Colts offensive line and the way they like to run the football. I think that matches DJ Giddens' skill set decently, so I would stash him. I don't think he sees a lot of carries if JT's there, but I do think maybe 4 or 5 carries a game, and if JT goes out, this guy skyrockets in value. Next up was another wide receiver I wasn't super high on. It's Isaac TeSlaa for the Detroit Lions, but I watched him in the Hall of Fame game. He had a couple of pretty solid catches. I saw people comparing him to Puka Nacua, which I thought was a bit silly, but I will say he's a very explosive, tall receiver that offers a lot of speed, burst, and just jump ball ability with this Lions offense. I know he's a hometown kid. He loved the Lions, and the Lions drafted him a lot higher than I thought he should have gone. He was a 3rd round pick, and like I said, he had a solid showing in the Hall of Fame game. I will say this wide receiver room is a little bit crowded with Amon-Ra, Jameson Williams, right? He probably fits in as the wide receiver 3 about mid-season, but I will say JMO has some injury history, also some off-the-field issues here and there. Amon-Ra hopefully stays healthy, but with TeSlaa, this is an explosive offense. I know they lost Ben Johnson, but I think TeSlaa can come in and make some valuable catches for us. He's a stash for the future 2026-2027 if they decide to not extend Jameson Williams. So TeSlaa, lots of upside, high ceiling. He's just a little bit raw, and you're going to have to wait for him to explode, I think. There's going to be some people that are very happy that I include Dante Thornton Jr. in this list, and it's for good reason. I mean, I'm a doubter in this guy just because he's a little bit raw, but I cannot deny the upside. 6'5", 205, great size at the position, 4.340, which is 100th percentile in terms of speed score. That's absolutely crazy numbers. The only other person that I can remember that did that was Calvin Johnson. We saw how he turned out. But I will say, coming out of Tennessee, he was not nearly as polished as Calvin Johnson was. Obviously, he barely got on the field for the majority of his college career, but he did lead Tennessee in receiving yards last year, 661 yards, 6 touchdowns, right? He's running with the ones with the Raiders, and for all accounts that I've heard, he's been doing really well in training camp, kind of adjusting to the NFL a little bit more than I expected him to, but I cannot deny he has a lead upside, decent draft capital in the 4th round. He's ranked outside of my top 100 wide receivers right now just because of how raw I think he is, and I like Besh a lot more in that wide receiver room. But if he can show some solid performances in the preseason, I think his value is going to boom, explode in the preseason, because his value is already exploding anyways because of the upside and the reports from training camp. But if he's not rostered in your league, you absolutely have to roster him immediately. All right, guys, next up, we have the first tight end on the list. It's Aronda Gadson, the second for the Chargers. And if you guys have been around the channel for a while, you know I love this guy. I've been talking about him all offseason. He's the son of former NFL wide receiver Aronda Gadson, who, if you were watching the Dolphins around the early to mid 2000s, you probably know who Aronda Gadson is. He was like a pretty solid wide receiver too in that offense back in the early 2000s. But he is phenomenal. I watched his tape all throughout Syracuse. He had 2 900-yard seasons, including his 2024 season, 73 receptions, 934 receiving yards, and 7 touchdowns. He has amazing hands. He can catch things in tight windows. He's got solid jump ball ability. You see his size at 6'5", 243 pounds. He's got ideal size for the position. And he has a thin tight end room around him. Will Dissly is pretty old now. He did catch a touchdown in the Hall of Fame game, but I think Aronda Gadson can overtake him by midseason. He's my tight end 29 for a reason, guys. Ignore the 5th round draft capital. If he is available in any of your leagues, I would snatch him up immediately. I know the team runs the ball a ton, but this guy is worth the stash if you can get him. All right, next up, we have another running back. It's Taj Brooks for the Cincinnati Bengals, and I love this guy coming out of Texas Tech. He wasn't the highest on my board because this was a phenomenal running back class, but I will say he had amazing production. He didn't have a game under 100 yards last year at Texas Tech, and they ran him relentlessly. He almost had 300 attempts, over 1,500 rushing yards, and 17 touchdowns. He scored in all but 1 game last year, and he can catch the ball out of the backfield a decent amount too. That's not his primary focus, but he can. You see the build, 6 foot, 212 pounds. I love a lot of what this guy brings to the table. He's not the fastest by any means, but I like his feet. He's got some sweet feet. He's got some solid power as well. And I thought the Bengals were going to take a running back a little bit earlier just because Chase Brown wasn't the most efficient running back last year. I know people love Chase Brown to death, but if you look at his efficiency metrics, he was not the best running back, not even close in the NFL last year. So I thought they would bring in another guy since Zach Moss was the only other guy they had on that roster. He gets released earlier last week, I believe. So Taj Brooks and Chase Brown are pretty much the only backs on this roster, and I think Taj Brooks fits in nicely as the third and short back and the goal line back. So Taj Brooks, he's definitely worth a stash if you can grab him in your dynasty leagues. Next up is a guy not a lot of people are talking about in terms of upside. It's Woody Marks for the Houston Texans, and at 24 years old, he's a little bit older, but I think that matters a lot more for wide receivers than running backs since they don't have the longest shelf life anyways. At 5'10", 207 pounds, he's got an average build, nothing great or bad about that. He is a former Mississippi State Bulldog, which is my favorite college team, unfortunately, and he caught a ton of passes, showcased some great athleticism, almost borderline elite receiving upside in college, and he transferred to USC in 2024 and had his best season yet. Almost 200 attempts, 1,100 rushing yards, 9 touchdowns, and you still saw the receiving chops a decent amount, 43 receptions, 321 receiving yards, and things that I love about him, he's a great athlete, solid speed. He's in college, he was one of the best athletes on the field at any given play and has some really solid elusiveness. He doesn't really break tackles pretty much ever, but I will say I think he's going to be the third down back immediately for the Houston Texans. And we got Joe Mixon, who has a foot problem right now. He might be sidelined for the first few weeks of the season, if not more than that. Nick Chubb's coming off a major injury. We don't know how he's going to look. So Woody Marks could be the most healthy back on this roster right now. So he's definitely worth a stash if he hasn't already been rostered in your leagues already. And I think if you could ship a 3rd round pick for him, I think that is very good value for Woody Marks. And at number 1 on my list, and the best stash this season, in my opinion, is Kroski Merritt, running back for the Washington Commanders. Yeah, he's probably rostered in a lot of your leagues at this point in time, but I love this guy. If he's not rostered, you need to go grab him immediately. Maybe your league's sleeping a little bit. I know he wasn't drafted in your rookie drafts if you did them earlier like I did in May. But at 24 years old, he's a little bit older, but I don't think that's too big of an issue. And you see the stats from college. He played at Arizona last year. He played in one game. That's his stats from one game. 13 attempts, 106 rushing yards, and a touchdown versus New Mexico. That is actually where he played before Arizona, and he had some eligibility issues. The NCAA thought that his redshirt season actually wasn't a redshirt season because he actually played longer. There's a whole thing about it. So he only got to play one game last year, but in that one game, you see some excellent burst. He's got some solid 23 production as well at New Mexico, and he was almost undrafted. He went late in the 7th round, but you see what you see on tape. He is phenomenal. Elusiveness, power. He's got some of the best bursts in this class as well, in my opinion. And he goes to the Commanders that, you know, basically they have Brian Robinson, who is a solid power back and has been very inconsistent with the Commanders. Obviously, he had some injury issues. He got shot, dealt with some injuries this past year as well. And Austin Eckler, who unfortunately hasn't been able to stay healthy and has fallen off a cliff compared to what he was doing in 2021, 2022. So Ja'Cory Kroski Merritt, he could absolutely be the RB1 in this offense if he shows out in preseason. I think he's going to. You see, he's my RB53. I think he can skyrocket up the boards if he showcases some good stuff in preseason. Once the preseason games start, these rookies won't be under the radar anymore. If you wait, someone else in your league will scoop them up or their prices will skyrocket. Let me know in the comments which stash you're targeting and who I might have missed. And don't forget to subscribe to Bobby's Big Board for more stash picks, rookie rankings, and dynasty strategy every week all season long. Thank you guys for watching as always, and I'll catch you guys in the next one.
Hey.